Welcome to the Kop TV, the voice of football's most famous stand. Welcome to a new season, the first ever season where we can officially call ourselves the reigning champions of England. It still feels great to say it, I cannot lie. Today we have a brand new instalment for you of Top of the Kops. Of course, I've been away for 2 weeks in the Canary Islands, getting that amazing suntan, as you can tell. What? It's there. It's just the lighting. You need to, it's fine. But here's what's coming up on tonight's show. I've got a comprehensive preview of all the weekend's action. I have two classic Would You Rather moments for our Manchester United and Leeds guests tonight. The first time they're going head to head this season. And I also have two huge Top of the Kops moments with some questions from you guys. So please get them in now if you have questions for our guests. And a quick reminder to like, comment to the video, share the stream. And of course, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. The first guest I'm going to introduce today is the amazing Sophie Ricco. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm excited for football to come back. The transfer talks do my head in, so it feels good to have a bit of a respite from that. How are you, Alex? You okay?
I'm very well, thank you. Listen, like I said, I've been away for a couple of weeks, but it's great to be back. And it's great to be back with a bang with Sophie. And we've also got Oscar from All Leeds TV. He's chilling there as well. How are we doing, man?
Yeah, not bad at all, mate. There's a certain game going on tomorrow, I think, mate. I think it's the champions versus the champions. I'm not sure which champions, but, you know, it's one of them, isn't it, mate? It's... looking forward to it, but also extremely nervous at the prospects of Salah, Mane, Firmino. It might be quite tough to sleep tonight, the prospects of that. But there we go, mate.
Yes, man. Listen, of course, we're going to get bang into the preview for tomorrow's game, Liverpool versus Leeds, of course, champions versus the champions. Later on in the show, first and foremost, Mr. David Shenton gets involved. Yo, Mr. AGT. YPOTY says, back again. And he's already... We're not even 3 minutes into the show. He's already asking me if there is any Thiago Alcantara news. We were speaking about this just off air a minute ago, and I'm sure we'll speak about him later. Claudia T, a massive fan of the channel. Evening, Alex and guests. So, guys, first and foremost, it's time to get into this season. Obviously, it starts tomorrow. Now, I wanted to ask Sophie first, as a huge Man United fan. This must really pain you, this question. And I saw Flex have to answer the same question the other day on AFTV on the Big Six debate. But a simple one for you, Soph. Can Liverpool retain the league?
Simple answer is yes, of course they can. Do I want them to? No. No, definitely not. But yeah, of course. I do think, the Thiago was mentioned there, I do think him coming in will add to that. I think, obviously, post-lockdown, when you'd already won the trophy, I thought it was sort of a massive dip. And it'll be interesting to see Liverpool's mentality going into this season. But there's no doubt about the quality in the squad that you've got. And if you add to that, of course they can.
Yeah, Oscar, I mean, Liverpool obviously cruised it last season. We all know that. Is the hunger still going to be there for this Liverpool team to go and retain it? Because that, as we all know, guys, is the true mark of a champion. It's about, okay, you've won it, but now go and win it again.
I think so. I think obviously you look at Klopp at Dortmund, you know, he won back-to-back titles. You say that obviously after Dortmund won the title, it was years since they'd won one, you know, previously, like it was to Liverpool, obviously the 30 years or so. But I think the hunger will still be there, 100%. You know, I think obviously, you know, I think maybe some focus might be more on the Champions League, other cup competitions potentially, especially Champions League. You might be focused back on that again. But for me, you can definitely retain it again. Absolutely no doubt about it. You know, for me, I'd still say you're the favourites. You know, City, I don't think they've strengthened enough so far. But again, there's still a month to go in the transfer window. Is Koulibaly going to City? Is he not? Either way, I still look at it and think, even if Liverpool don't get Thiago, don't make another signing, you're still strong contenders. It'll be more difficult this time, though, I think. But... you know, with Klopp there, the experience you've gained in the last 2 years, you know, was it 97 points the season before, 99 points the season just gone? You know, the experience is there, the know-how is there to win tight games. So I think so, mate. I think you're still strong contenders.
Brilliantly said there, Oscar. I think you just mentioned that Liverpool are the favourites. Do you know what? For me personally, I think last season we probably weren't the favourites and we won it. I actually hate the title of being the odds-on favourite. I really... would prefer us to be the underdogs, if anything. I think there's more pressure on you from when you're out and out favourite from the start of the season. David says, I hope you weren't getting drunk and beating up police in Greece on holiday, buddy. It seems to be on vogue recently. A little shot there at Sophie. No, I wasn't beating up police, and I was actually in Tenerife, which is part of the Canary Islands, which numbers of corona are really low. So the fact that the UK government had to put me in isolation for 2 weeks, even though mainland Spain is a lot worse than Grenary, it's bullshit. But anyway, no worries whatsoever. Dugout says good evening. He also says Harry Maguire played 55 games for United last season. All he needed was a rest.
Stop it, Doug. Stop it, Doug.
When you agreed to this, this is what you allowed yourself to enter. It's the
absolute... When all this came out, I said a few jokes myself, like about Bruno taking his penalty and all that, because you just think, oh, it's another footballer in the headline, it'll blow over, it's one of them things. But then I think when obviously Harry came out and spoke, it made me realise the severity of it all. He was obviously set up, and I'm just hoping that justice prevails. But like, if it was a rival player, I'd be doing the same thing. Like I say, I started off with a few light-hearted jokes, but like I think the severity there has really come through. I think you wouldn't go on live TV and speak the way you have if you weren't innocent. Yeah, he's not exactly an actor, is he, Harry Maguire? He doesn't strike me as an actor. So,
I mean, there's a couple of body language experts that could look at it and say maybe there were parts of it that he was lying about, but I personally do believe he was set up. I think it's clear from the chain of events that happened that night. Anyway, this isn't a Man United channel. Harry Maguire.
Rent free, I'll tell you. Every comment.
Listen on my channel. Kieran B says, who does Oscar support? He's a big Leeds boy from All Leeds TV. There you go. He's wearing the championship t-shirt there as well. Claudia T says, thinks Leeds match will be tough. Absolutely. Kieran B coming with some facts here. The bookies have City as favourites, 17 to 20, Liverpool 2-1. So I'm a big fan of being the underdogs. David also says, like a lot, I'm concerned about the influence missing crowd will have on us. I reckon it hurts us more than most teams. I mean, Sophie, you've seen United play at Anfield so many times down the years. And Gary Neville's come out, Fernandes come out, Rooney's come out, Giggs. They all hate playing at Anfield. The atmosphere was incredible. I mean, do you think tomorrow night when we play Leeds, the atmosphere with no fans will have any difference on the team?
I think it's got to. I play football myself, and obviously we only have a few spectators. But I think especially for teams who are pushing for a late goal, or even in a derby game, and you need that extra push, the fans of the 12th man, and you're missing that. So it's going to make a major difference. I do like watching it though, when you can hear the coaches talking. I do think it's really interesting. But I think in terms of that lift, especially the last 10 minutes, like I say, if you're desperate for a goal, quite often fans will lift the players, and I think that'll be missing.
Absolutely, Oscar. City obviously trying to get back on top this season after a pretty dismal campaign last year, 9 losses. And I personally think if someone like Jurgen Klopp was to lose 9 matches, I think everyone would be calling for his head. Do you think Pep's actually quite lucky, the fact that he's actually got away with not only losing 9 games last season and keeping his job, which, let's be honest, at Man City, that's not acceptable, but also they're now back in the Champions League. Do you think he's been lucky at all, Oscar?
Yeah, I mean, you can look at it 2 ways, I guess. I think the big factor for the losing 9 games, I think a lot of it happened in the first half of the season. I can't remember the exact stats, but Liverpool just raced ahead, didn't they, early doors? I think the big thing for City last season was that injury to Laporte. Yeah. I think when Laporte did come back, they still lost a couple of games, but they seemed to be a little bit better after that. Still not at the usual standards, but yeah, mate, I think if it had been anyone other than Pep Guardiola, I think the pressure would have been higher. I think if it had been a lesser manager, a lesser, kind of prestige to an extent. Say if it was, I don't know, say Mikel Arteta, for example, or I don't know, Frank Lampard, someone like that, with lesser prestige. If they'd have maybe lost 9 games, having spent that amount of money, I think the pressure would have been on. But we're kind of seeing this from Pep's first season at City. He had a really bad first season, really, by his standards. And then he kind of bounced back and with the Centurions the next season after. But I think this season's a big one for Guardiola. I think it's more still the Champions League's the big one. And I think that plays into Liverpool's hands to an extent. He's still got to win that Champions League title. If he wins the Premier League, he wins the Premier League. It's still not going to change any kind of perception of his time in England. He's got to deliver that Champions League title without Leo Messi.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the big thing for Pep, sorry to interrupt you there, was obviously not replacing Company. not only defensively, obviously they've looked vulnerable, but also the leadership, his mentality. I think he offered a lot to their dressing room. And when he went, I think you can see there's like a massive hole there that they haven't filled. And Koulibaly obviously could be the guy to answer that.
Yeah, we look at the names that have left City. I mean, Sane's gone, Bravo's gone, Silva is gone. Where will they finish this year? Could you predict?
They're still going to be up there, aren't they? They're still going to be up there. There's so much quality.
Put your hat on it now.
See, I think Liverpool will retain it, and I hate to say that, so I'm going to say second would be my prediction for City. But in terms of a United fan, I'm just hoping that the gap isn't as big this season. Obviously, like you mentioned, Liverpool ran away with it, and that simply cannot happen again. People need to get closer to Liverpool.
Yeah, I mean, Chelsea, Oscar, have been probably the most active in the transfer market. Werner, Silva, Chilwell, Sarr and Ziyech all coming in. There's more names on their way as well, I think. Willian and Pedro out. I mean, when you're talking about the title contenders, I think right now we can all agree that the conversation starts with Liverpool and City, and then the race for top 3, top 4, top 5, top 6 could be any teams from either Tottenham, Chelsea, Arsenal, United. Where do you see Chelsea finishing, Oscar?
I mean, Chelsea, I look at and think, I just see, you'll probably remember this in Liverpool when you sold Luis Suarez, when you made so many signings, all look like good signings on paper, and it didn't quite gel. I just think Chelsea, they're making too many signings now. If that is such a thing, you know, they've got to bed them all in. There's a shorter pre-season as well. And when you're changing your whole attacking dynamic, you know, you've got Ziyech in there, Havertz, obviously Pulisic is already there, and then Werner. That's like a totally different front four. And look, they're all world-class players, but you've got to get them all gelled together. And it doesn't always just work like that. You know, you've seen it before, Van Gaal's time, Falcao and Van Persie, Di Maria, etc., etc. You know, having all those playing on the pitch at the same time, but it doesn't always work. If you can't gel them together, it's a tough challenge. But for me, I'm going to go really controversial. I'm not 100% sure. Never mind Chelsea challenging for a title. I'm not 100% sure they're going to make the top 4 at the minute, to be honest. I think it's a very, very competitive top 6 at the minute. I think they'll all be fairly close to each other. I certainly can't see, a massive gap from first to second and then second to third. I think it's going to be a lot tighter this season across the top 6, to be honest.
Yeah, some comments coming in for Sophie here. I mean, David says, how pleased are you with the Van der Beek with the Van der Beek signing as the probable Sancho replacement?
I'm happy with Van der Beek coming in, but not as the Sancho replacement. I think we still need that Sancho player on the right, and obviously I still think we need a centre back, to be honest with you. So yeah, Van der Beek I'm happy with, but I still think we need more than him. I just want to touch on Lampard as well. You mentioned obviously the players that he signed. I think that gives him a lot of added pressure this season, and if those players don't settle quickly, because obviously players don't always hit the ground running, as you mentioned, and they've got a lot of players to settle in. If they don't settle quickly, he could be the first manager to be sacked this season.
Yeah, a lot of chat about who is the first man to go this season. If we speak about the top 4, there's a couple of names we could mention. Oscar Mourinho said Spurs would have finished 4th last season if he had been there from the start. They brought in Doherty, Højbjerg, and Joe Hart. 3 decent names there.
Joe Hart, I didn't even know that. I did not even know Joe Hart went there.
Spurs' 3rd choice keeper now.
Wow, did not know.
Yeah. So, I mean, Oscar, where do you think? I mean, we'll go through Spurs, Arsenal, Wolves, and Everton in this top 4 contenders section, and then United at the end. But where do you think Spurs will end up, Oscar?
I think with Mourinho, I think about 6th, to be honest. I think about the same as last season in the league. But I think with Mourinho, it's always about us winning the trophy. You know, we saw it when he was at Man United. You know, I think in that first season, his first proper season at Man United, the league campaign didn't go well, but he did make them very competitive in the cup competitions. You know, he made sure they won the trophy first and foremost. And you look at Tottenham, they've not won the trophy for 12 years now, I think it is. That is going to be the first thing on that objective board. I think that'll be above top 4 in Mourinho's head, to be honest. I think, even if Spurs, sort of with 5 or 6 games to go, are still there, challenging for the top 4, but if they're still in the cup competitions, I think Mourinho prioritises that. He's never going to change in that aspect. It's always about the trophies. I don't think you'll see the top 4 as a trophy. I think he'll like to tell the whole media that getting into the top 4 will make him the best manager in the world again. But I don't quite think Spurs in the top 4. But I do rate the signings, to be fair, they've made.
Yeah, some more comments coming in here. George Howden says, if City want to challenge, they need a leader on and off the pitch. The dugout says, hopefully Ollie continues his stronghold over Pep. Not too sure about that. I'd love it if Lampard got sacked, says Kieran B. And Dicko says, the whole because Laporte was injured, Liverpool won is nonsense. They are owned by a state. They could have bought a defender. Absolutely agree. The dugout also says Chelsea will either play well or fall flat on their face. Speaking about Arsenal, Sophie, I mean, 8th place last season is their lowest since 94-95. They finished 12th that year. Arsenal head into the new season, obviously very optimistic under Mikel Arteta. I mean, I filmed very recently with the AFTV lot, and you just wouldn't believe the confidence that they've not had.
You would.
The confidence is mad. I mean, the last 2 games competitively they've played, I think they've won 2 trophies. But will that
Community
be
Shield? Oh, no, Community Shield is not trophy.
Sophie,
Shield.
what I will say though is, if Liverpool won it, I would have counted it as a major.
Yeah.
But with all that said, Soph, is that seriously going to be enough to challenge for the top 4? I mean, that's 4 places they have to climb at least.
They've obviously tried to strengthen defensively. I think it all depends on how those defenders adjust, because I think for a long time now Arsenal have needed to strengthen their back line. They signed David Luiz to be the answer, and I think it's quite obvious he's not the answer. And I think that's an area they've really struggled. So I think it depends how their signings settle. But don't get me wrong, going forward, there's so many promising players. Obviously, Martinelli is a good talent. Saka, he's got a number 7 shirt now, so there's obviously big hopes for him there, and he's an exciting player. And obviously keeping Aubameyang, which I'm pretty certain they will do. He's just such an important player. And in a poor Arsenal side, he's still banging in goals, scoring important goals. So they've definitely got a good platform to build on. And I do think that Arteta is good for Arsenal, a bit like I believe Ollie is for us. I think he gets the club, and he's an attractive manager to play for. I think Arsenal are a bit like us. They're, if anything, a year behind us in terms of transition. And I do think now they're on the right path, and I think they'll improve this season. But a top 4 could be a stretch. Like I say, it depends on how their signings settle and if they're making any more as well.
Yeah, I mean, George here says he can't really see Everton challenging for Europe. We'll touch on them in a second. The dugout, Spurs and Arsenal in the Europa League will screw them. I think Leicester are going to be heavily wounded by the Europa League. Stephen says, I thought the way AFTV did their live reaction to the Community Shield was embarrassing, because it looked like they'd won the league with those reactions. I mean, they wouldn't know what it's like to win the league recently anyway. But anyway, Oscar, let's touch on Wolves. A great team last season. I think they've really gone on to solidify not only their Premier League status, but their status in the top 8 at least. I think they were a real underdog last season. And, you know, they've kept the squad together, Oscar, and they've even added Fabio Silva for 35 million. They've got a lot of Portuguese talent there now. Is this the season that they're going to break the top 4, or are they just going to fall away?
It's a hard one, mate. It's hard because you look at Wolves' starting 11 on paper. You look at it and think, that is absolutely unbelievable. You got Neves, Moutinho, and you think Neves and Moutinho. If you look at the rest of the top 6, that's probably a better midfield than a lot of the rest of the top 6. To be fair, and obviously keeping Raul Jimenez. If they do manage to keep Raul Jimenez, who I think's probably the most underrated player in the league for me, after maybe Firmino. I think I look at Jimenez and think, wow, he is seriously some player. And obviously got Traore, seems to be improving all the time. Jota, I think is a top player as well. And obviously the back line's nice and solid too. You know, they've played with each other for a good number of years now, and they understand each other's game. But I still think with Wolves, not quite. I still think they'll be the best of the rest again. Probably about 7th, maybe sneak into the top 6, possibly. But I'm not quite sure they're ready for the top 4 yet. I still think they do need a little bit more depth for that. You know, if Jimenez got injured, I know they've just signed another wonder kid, to be fair, but if Neves got injured, Moutinho got injured, they are in a bit of bother then. So I just think they might just miss out for that reason, but they'll probably improve again, I think.
Yeah, the dugout says having no Europe will help Wolves. They could be in a better position, I suppose, without playing Europa League football in the league this season. Now, Everton, I mean, yes, they have gone big in the transfer market this season. They've brought in Alan Doucouré and James Rodriguez, and there was another one I couldn't remember. But essentially, Everton now, with the money they've spent, there's a lot of pressure on Ancelotti, like we were talking about with Chelsea and Lampard. That's a lot of money. And it seems to me that for the last 2 or 3 years, Everton really have gone big in the transfer market. You go back to, I think it was 2018 when they bring in Iwobi, Walcott, Schneiderlin. You know, these aren't top level players, but they have played for top teams, and they might be past their best. And to me, it just seems again, unfortunately for Everton, that they keep buying players who are 5 years past their best. You look at James Rodriguez. What has he really done since the World Cup in 2014? Not too much. They've also rumoured to be bringing in Tamori as well, who actually I think would be a great addition to their squad.
Definitely.
So, what do you think about Everton this season? Obviously, there's a huge joke about how Everton are just looking in the shadow of Liverpool. Is this transfer window going to prove crucial for them?
It's an interesting one. I mean, Decore, I think is a good signing because he's obviously played in the Premier League. But James, you mentioned, I think he's a massive risk because not only because, like you said, he could be past it, but I think, I'll be honest, since the World Cup, watching James Rodriguez, he's obviously a talented player, but he's never stood out for me. I don't think he's really performed. He's living off the hype of that wonder goal that he scored, and he's got to prove himself. So I think it's a risk for him, but also for Everton as well because of the money. But I genuinely feel that if he hits the ground running, then it could be an exciting season. But you'd think with the money they've spent, Everton are obviously going to be aiming for Europe next season.
Yeah, and that's why I did put them in the top 4 contenders. But realistically, do I think Everton are going to get top 4 next season? No.
I don't think so.
And I say that with a little bit of a smile, but you know, it's better than 13th, I guess. So right, let's talk about some relegation contenders. The bookies have it as West Brom, Fulham, and Aston Villa in order. Do we agree with those? Are they 3 names that we think will go down?
I would probably swap Villa with West Ham.
Yeah, big mess down at the London Stadium right now. With a lot of.
I think obviously David Moyes, he's got a big job there. Obviously, they're letting certain players go, and that Noble's openly voiced that he's not happy. Like you say, it's an absolute mess there. But for a few seasons there, they just seem to constantly have a crap season and just about get out at the end. Like, they don't get relegated, and I think their time is coming. And I think this season could be the time.
Yeah, Oscar, what are your thoughts on who's going down? I mean, I for one, I don't know about Sophie, but I for one, I'm not involved in Leeds in this segment of the show.
No, I'm actually not.
Go down. Guys, I'm just going to keep amongst yourselves. To keep talking, Oscar, I'm just going to turn the light on in here. It's a bit dark.
No worries. Yeah, I'd agree with Sophie. I still think West Brom, Fulham, I think it's going to be the bottom 2. But I'm going to go, a bit of a surprise one, I'm going to go Newcastle as the third to bottom.
Ooh.
I just think with Newcastle, I think the Wilson signing is probably going to be an upgrade on Joe Linton. Surely he's going to score more than 2 goals in like 35 hours of football or whatever. It was something mad like that. But I was looking at it thinking, yeah, that's a decent signing. But I look at the rest of the team and I just think the whole general feeling around Newcastle isn't great. I think even when they get the fans back in the ground, say the second half of the season, it just feels really toxic there at the minute. You know, I think in Steve Bruce, I think he did okay last season, but I think as the season kind of finished off, started to get a little bit found out. Newcastle, I think in terms of like all the stats in the world, I think the bottom, to be fair, defensively going forward. I just think, unless John Joe Shelby has another really good season, the back line keeps plenty of clean sheets. I just can't see Newcastle having enough goals outside of Wilson. I don't think as a team they look good enough, to be honest, Newcastle. I think Rafa did absolute wonders there. And I still just think that maybe Rafa's sort of influence on the club's kind of starting to really wear off now. It's been a year since he's gone. I think this is going to be it now for Newcastle. I think the same with Bournemouth kind of happened last season. When you're just so close to that bottom 3 and he's kind of just lingering around there, like West Ham are, to be fair. West Ham, I'd definitely say, are going to be struggling as well. And I take it as a massive compliment, to be fair, what you said about Leeds, because my first objective this season is 40 points. It might sound boring, but 40 points and see what happens from there. If we do better than that, who knows? But I think it's going to be tough. I still think it's going to be tough. We're going to be a little bit nervous, but I still think we'll be okay. But yeah, Newcastle, I look at and think there's just not enough goals outside of Wilson for me in that team.
Yeah, Newcastle are kind of in that bracket of the other clubs that could potentially go down and are worth discussing. Sophie's mentioned West Ham there. You've mentioned Newcastle, Oscar. I'm going to chuck Brighton in the mix. I think they were very lucky last season in the end to not go down. They scraped it. And I just don't think they've added enough. I mean, of course, Adam Lallana's gone there, and I hope he has a good season personally. Great servant to Liverpool. But I just think they're going to struggle this season. I really do. I don't think the manager has the most Premier League experience. Obviously, he did keep them up last year, which is a great credit to him. What you have to remember is the teams below them last season, Brighton, were awful. You look at Norwich, who barely put up a fight. Bournemouth were shoddy. And Aston Villa were poor as well. And I do think Aston Villa will flirt again with relegation, but I think they'll be all right in the end. So between us, I think, can we agree that West Brom, Fulham, and I'm going to say West Ham are going down? Do we all agree on that?
I agree on that.
We all agree.
Really won't be surprised at all.
Yeah, Stephen here says Everton's first team couldn't even beat the Liverpool kids in the FA Cup. That's how far they have fallen. Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that. Let's get into some predictions, more specific ones, though. Who do we think, guys, in one word, is going to win the Golden Boot next season? Obviously, Mane and Salah have shared it. Salah's taken it. Obviously, last season, Vardy won it. But there's all these players that we can mention for it. But really put your neck on the line here, guys. I want one-word answer for the next following questions. Who's going to get the Golden Boot? Let's start with Oscar first.
Aubameyang.
There you go. Clear as day. Says it off the bat. Sophie, what do you reckon?
Mine was the same. Aubameyang.
Aubameyang again. Very interesting. Yeah. Maybe you've been watching too much of Troops, but no, unbelievable player. Absolutely dealt with Liverpool, to be fair, in the Community Shield recently. I'm going to ask you now, who's going to win the Golden Glove? And we'll go with Sophie first.
It's hard to go against the team who I think is going to win the league, to be honest with you. But I said I answered this question on my stream yesterday. I know this isn't one word, but I went with De Gea, and it's because it's wishful thinking. I'm hoping that De Gea gets his head lifted through this break and he surprises a lot of people, especially with Henderson pushing behind him. So I'm going to be controversial. I'm going to say De Gea, even though I know that is hopeful. But that's just what I want to see next season.
Fair enough. De Gea there. I mean, whether he'll actually play that many games with Henderson.
It'd be interesting to see, yeah.
Very interesting. Oscar, Golden Glove. Who's going to grab that?
Alisson Becker for me. I still look at that Liverpool back four and just think, where's the weakness kind of thing? You know, where's the weakness? And it's, you know, they're just all improving all the time for me. And Becker, I mean, to be fair, how he didn't get in that PFA team this season, I don't know. I know Nick Pope had a really good season. He did, to be fair. He was absolutely outstanding at times. But I look at Becker and think, not just he doesn't make loads of saves, but he makes saves at crucial times in games. You know, last season, how many times did he make saves at Liverpool? I remember that one at Norwich when it's just absolutely, he's just like, he's had a second to think and he's just crucial save. And I just think, you know, I look at him and think he is probably the best goalkeeper in the league. I would probably put him above Ederson. I think obviously De Gea has kind of, you know, last couple of seasons. I still think there's definitely a top goalkeeper in De Gea. You know, I think it is a little bit, you know, in terms of what rival fans say, I think obviously De Gea is one of those keepers now whenever he makes a mistake, that's just going to be magnified. Like any goalkeeper, you know, once a perception builds of a goalkeeper that they're dodgy, one mistake and it's like, oh, it's De Gea making a mistake again. But there's plenty of times last season where he still made the trademark save. So he's definitely a shout. I think, you know, Ederson, I just think good goalkeeper, but defence in front of him is just going to keep him too busy.
Yeah, we've got more suggestions here. Akil P gives us his predictions for who's going down. He says Fulham, West Brom and Crystal Palace, one that we didn't actually mention there before. The dugout now says Aston Villa, Fulham and West Brom to go down. Palace and West Ham are in for big struggles. And he also feels that United, Sheffield United that is, might have that second season syndrome. But I'm keeping with those three to go down. The dugout also says he reckons Danny Ings to get top goal scorer next season. Liam Roach says Kane. I'm guessing Harry Kane, not Michael. And Timo Werner's a good shout as well, coming in at Chelsea. He's going to score some goals for sure. Now, obviously, the thumbnail to this picture is Trent winning Young Player of the Year. Who do we think? I mean, it's so early to predict, guys. I know this is really tough, especially Young Player of the Year. But Soph, I mean, you've got some great young players coming through. Would you put maybe Mason Greenwood on this list for Young Player of the Year next year?
I think it's hard not to, the way that he finished last season. Obviously, bit of a saga with him, with obviously what's going on in England, but that situation I'm not going to talk about much. It's stupid, but yeah, I think Mason Greenwood's got to be in with a shout, hasn't he? The way he finished last season, it's just about, obviously, if Sancho comes in, how often is Mason Greenwood going to start? It's an interesting one, but he can play all three of those front positions, which helps him, to be fair.
Yeah, it definitely does help. And when you think that Sancho pretty much, if he does come in, would absolutely take his
Yeah,
position in the
you'd
team.
imagine so. Yeah.
Yeah, Oscar, for you, Player of the Year, again, a really hard one to call at this point, this early. Last year, it was Henderson that won it, just been confirmed in the last few days. Who are we going for next season?
On the basis that I think Liverpool you'll retain it, it's hard. It's so hard to say. It just depends, who's, what elements of your team stands out. I think for me, I think Sadio Mane's been knocking on the door for quite a while now. 2 or 3 seasons where you could say he's a solid shout for Player of the Season. So I'll go Mane. I'll go Mane again. I think it's got to be. It's got to be acknowledged one time for this. Surely, he's just going to outperform everyone. I think Mane, maybe even a shout out to Aubameyang, who I've mentioned, because I think Arsenal will massively improve next season under Arteta. Probably getting a bit more in the spotlight. He's always kind of ignored for those kind of things because he's playing for Arsenal, and the last few seasons they have been not great at all. But I think this season they'll probably get a little bit more like the old Arsenal, I think. So yeah, I'll go Mane. I'll still go for, I think.
I would probably agree with you there, Oscar. I'm hoping so. Anyway,
Bruno.
I don't know about Bruno. United got 22 penalties last season. It'd be interesting to see how many they get this season.
You've got to win them. Liverpool, that's what I'm saying. Come on, you got to win them.
Exactly. Get your questions in, guys, for Sophie and Oscar. We're going to do a Would You Rather now, but then after that, we will have time for some more questions for the guys. The first Would You Rather of the season here on the Kop TV on Top of the Kops is this one. Who's going to be a better signing this season? We've got Rodrigo and Donny van der Beek. Let us know in the comments what you think. But I'm going to go with Sophie to start. Like we mentioned there, the new number 34, Donny van der Beek, joins Man United. Is he going to kick on straight away? Or, I mean, we're actually comparing him here to Rodrigo. It's difficult midfield and striker. How do you think he's going to get?
I want to say first, I think Rodrigo looks a decent signing for Leeds, and I'm excited to see him in the Premier League. I think he's a player who stood out for a few seasons now, and he's an interesting one. But Van der Beek, he just seems to fit us perfectly. I know, obviously, it's interesting to see where he's going to fit in, but in terms of the way that he plays, he seems to, obviously, he's already joined us and he seems to be so happy to be at United. But just in the dressing room, he seems to have the right balance. Obviously, you've got to be careful bringing big egos in. It could upset the balance. Ollie's obviously looking at that kind of profile of player.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see Van der Beek, so I'm going to have to say Van der Beek on this one. But I do think Rodrigo is a decent signing for Leeds.
And Oscar?
I think, I think Van der Beek's a good sign. Is a good signing, to be fair. I think the only thing I would say about Van der Beek is how is he going to play every game? I think with Rodrigo, I look at and think, when you look at our current forward options, I think the one issue we had last season was taking chances. I just think Rodrigo, as soon as he gets sort of a couple of training sessions in, gets Bielsa level of fitness, like 2% body fat or whatever it is these days, I just think Rodrigo will play every single game, and he's a massive for what we need. Just someone just to get on the end of chances, create a few for everyone else. And I just think Van der Beek is going into the team, obviously with Pogba there, Fernandes there, already some top class midfielders or people who can play number 10. I just think Rodrigo is kind of just a step up in class in terms of our other forward options. As much as I do love them all, I would just say Rodrigo, in terms of the influence he'll have on our team compared to what Van der Beek will have at Man United.
I personally think out of these two players, there's a lot more pressure on Rodrigo to deliver over Van der Beek. I think, as Oscar mentioned there, he's going into an already really good midfield. Actually, if you look at it from the second half of the season, in particular with United, they obviously finished really strong. But I do think if Rodrigo doesn't hit the net in the first 5 or 6 games, you really do think that the pressure is going to be on him. And then when January comes around, who knows? He could be gone. But Game McQueen agrees with me, says Rodrigo definitely is clinical. Diego, who actually is a big Crystal Palace fan, but tunes into this show every time. Unbelievable. He says evening all. And then he gets a hello back there from the dugout. David with a question for Soph after this. But the second Would You Rather this week is something that we've already touched on. Who will be the first manager to get sacked? Now, in this, we've obviously got some funny pictures, to be fair to the producer. We've got Frank Lampard. We've got Scott Parker, I don't know what the zoomed out picture of that is, but he looks to be having some stressful time there. And the famous picture that we all know and love of David Moyes at West Ham as well. I mean, Soph, we'll go to you first. Out of these three, who's going first?
I thought that was Gollum then at the bottom, not David Moyes, to be fair. But yeah, I mentioned West. I think, yeah, David Moyes, Gollum. That's what I'm saying, because I think I've mentioned West Ham. I'll go there, and it's a mess at the bottom. I think there'll be a falling out in the dressing room. I can see them turning on him. It just seems in shambles. So I'm going to say David Moyes.
David Moyes. Oscar, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd agree, to be fair. I think they're all three are really good shouts, to be fair. I just think with Lampard, I think because he's so trusted at Chelsea at the minute, this moment in time, I think it'll probably be more of an end of season thing. If it doesn't go too well for him, I can't see him being sacked mid-season. I think even for Abramovich, that would take big guts to do that. With the Chelsea fans, you're absolutely loving him. But yeah, I think Parker will really struggle this season. I think Fulham just haven't invested enough. But again, I think he's got quite a bit of trust at Fulham. But West Ham fans are already having doubts of David Moyes. I think even after last season, I know he kept them up, but it was pretty dull. In terms of it was just. I mean, David Moyes teams aren't known for being particularly entertaining, but I just can't see if they lose a couple of games. I just think the West Ham board will say, "Yeah, that's it now." It could be quite early doors. David Moyes goes.
Yeah, I mean, I think personally, the fact that they even brought Moyes back in the first place was just a bit of a head scratcher. I think they've made a bit of a rod for their own back by bringing him in. It obviously didn't work the first time. They brought him back a second time. So I genuinely think 3 or 4 games in, if things aren't going well, they've already made the rod for him. And I actually do believe, depending on their start, that West Ham will be the first team to sack their manager. Ellie says, David Moyes, Troop says it, not me. Lampard, it's Lampard. David Moyes is a football genius. Absolutely not. And David Hornby says, peace out, LA. Oh, great. I think that's his postcode. You'll never walk alone. Love that. David Moyes by Christmas. Lampard by the end of the season, says Akil. And the dugout asks, can anyone see Deitch walking out at Burnley? It's a good shout. I think Deitch has obviously now he's probably one of the longest serving managers now in the Premier League. Will he walk from Burnley is a very different question to will he get sacked. But let's get on to a couple of questions up here that I thought
Dean Smith's an interesting one as well. Just want to touch on that. Dean Smith at Villa. I think if it doesn't work for him there, that could be another interesting one.
Villa have spent so much money, as we all know, Soph. And yeah, I totally agree. If Dean Smith doesn't kick off and make a better start than they did last season, then he could be in trouble. But the big question is, how many penalties will Man United cheat their way to? Like I mentioned earlier, so a lot of penalties for United last season, way more than anyone else. I mean, you can see
win them.
You can see that he's joking in the question, but
yeah, of course.
Akil also says he thinks Bruno Fernandes for Player of the Season. Don't think United will win the title, but Bruno can stat pad easily. What do you think about this, Soph, when people say Bruno's a stat pad player? First of all, try and actually describe what the term stat pad means for us that might not get it.
People are saying he gets a lot of assists from 2-yard passes, for example, or he scored a few tap-ins or penalties, and obviously it doesn't reflect how he's played. But one thing I will say is when he first came, the impact he had on us was phenomenal. He really lifted everybody up at United. And I will be honest and say I thought for the last probably 4 or 5 games, I thought he was pretty poor, to be honest with you. And he was still getting man of the matches somehow, I don't know, but I genuinely thought he was poor. I thought he looked tired, which is understandable. I'm just hoping he can start the season like he started his career at United, because he was instrumental in everything good that we did. Anything positive came through Bruno Fernandes, and he really was a quality impact on United. So I think it'd be interesting to see him next season. Obviously, the likes of Pogba back, fully fit around him, Van der Beek coming into it as well. Bruno Fernandes is a quality player. I know we call him Bruno Fernandes because of the penalties he got, but he's a quality player, and anybody who's being blind to that is just being bitter, to be honest, because the impact he's had on us has been immense.
No, I'd have to agree. I do think the impact he's had potentially saved your season last year. It really wasn't going
100%.
I actually think Solskjaer was maybe 1 or 2 games away from getting the sack, and then Bruno's come in and obviously done really well. Diego, question for Oscar. Would you take the Premiership survival or a win over Liverpool tomorrow? Great to see two massive clubs head-to-head again, Liverpool and Leeds United. Love that.
All day long survival. As much as it would be amazing to win at Anfield, it's got to be survival. I mean, I think we will cause one shock next season. I think under Marcelo Bielsa, I think we will beat one of the big teams next season. We'll probably get a couple of hidings as well, to be fair, with how open we are. But I do think there'll be one where it just all gels together. If it's Man City at home, Chelsea at home, Arsenal at home, something like that, I just think there'll be one where it just gels together and it'll be like, wow, that's Marcelo Bielsa's football at full tilt. But yeah, no, survival for me, over any kind of like big headline grabbing wins like that.
Yeah, Kieran B actually agrees with Soph here. Says Bruno looked a bit jaded after lockdown. Let's get into the top of the KOPS moments of the week. Of course, top of the pops, top of the KOPS has got to be a number one. And this week, number two is this, and it's Dejan Lovren receiving a very special gift from the captain, Jordan Henderson. It's a beautifully written letter from Hendo with a replica Premier League trophy, as you can see there. I actually don't know how big that is. I can't actually tell if that's a small one like I've got with the really kind of that size, 30 kind of centimeters, or it's a real life size one. I can't tell. Perspective is everything. But Lovren tweeted, "Thank you, captain. No words needed except some tears." He's obviously playing out in Russia at the minute at Zenit. He says he's a blessed man who had an incredible journey with you. You are the real man in the dressing room. Good luck in the new season, and thank you for this amazing gift. Absolute class there from Jordan Henderson, still looking after players that have left Liverpool. And number one this week, as you've seen in the thumbnail, it's this man, Trent Alexander-Arnold, receiving the Young Player of the Year award from the PFA. The first Liverpool player to win the Young Player of the Year award since Stevie G back in 2001. And before that, it was Robbie Fowler in 95. But it's great to see a Scouse lad especially taking that beautiful trophy home. Love that. Big fan of Trent, as we all know. And a couple last questions coming in here. A question for Sophie. Assuming Sancho signs, which other two areas would you like your Man United team to invest to take Liverpool's title? Oh, it's a big question, that.
I think being realistic, like I mentioned, another centre-back, left-footed centre-back preferably. I think we desperately need. And we've been linked, obviously, with Reguilon. Is it Reguilon? Tellez as well for left-back. I would take a centre-back and a left-back as well as Sancho. I think that is a good transfer window for us, definitely. But I also think long term we need a goal scorer. Martial, I think, finished the season fantastically well, but will he score us enough goals across the season is yet to be seen. So I think another quality striker, with Igalo departing, is somewhere that we need to address as well. Yeah,
absolutely. Quick one for you then, Oscar, before we go. Of course, it is the James Milner derby tomorrow, as Ant so kindly says there. Let's get a score prediction from yourself. I'm going to let you go first on this one, Oscar.
Okay. You're going to get two. One's going to be my head, one's going to be my heart.
And then we'll mix
my head's saying high scoring game, but 3-2 Liverpool. Being honest, I just think it would be an absolutely top quality game tomorrow. My heart's saying we just about sneak a 2-2. Yeah, that's head or heart. Yeah.
Let me get this straight. Either way, you think we're going to Anfield tomorrow and we're getting 2 goals? Either way.
I just think it's going to be so open tomorrow. I just think it's going to be so open. I can't realistically see us getting anything there. It might even be 4-2, 5-2, but I just think it's just going to be such a high-scoring game. And I think it'll be similar to that Chelsea game towards the end of the season. I'm not saying Chelsea's firepower, but we will try and play that way at Anfield, and maybe we might just catch, one of the fullbacks out of position, when you're trying to push up.
Yeah.
Maybe, but realistically, if we get anything tomorrow, it'd be absolutely immense.
Yeah, I'm going to go with 3-1 Liverpool. I do think Leeds will score. I do think the game will be open. I do think there'll be chances at both ends. But I'm just hoping our kind of clinicalness at Anfield recently. You mentioned the Chelsea game. That was our last game there, and we scored 5 goals. So I'm hoping to see goals. Stephen says 4-1 to Liverpool tomorrow for me. Ant says Milner anytime. Love that. And Diego says, which leads me on to say, that's the end of the show, if you catch my drift. But listen, a huge shout out to both Sophie and Oscar. Tell us where we can find you, Sophie. I mean, your handle's there, but I believe it is different on on Insta and
Yeah.
Twitter?
My Instagram is Sophricho with a kiss on the end of it. That is my Twitter on the screen, Sophricho, and my channel is called Hair Dry Treatment as well. So if people could subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. And thank you for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure. Always an enjoyable show.
Oh, thank you so much. Listen, guys, get into Sophie's amazing content that she does, the hairdryer treatment. It's really great. I think she's really pushing the boundaries, especially for female content creators. Akil quickly then says, 1-1, Liverpool could be a bit rusty and Leeds will be buzzing for their first game back. Claudia T says 3-1 Liverpool. Diego, initially 1-1, but Leeds might get a win. Fucking hell, what a way to finish the show. Oscar as well, my bro, thanks so much for coming on. We can find you on Twitter, Oscar Mario, and then All Leeds TV.
Yeah, all these we're on. Obviously, YouTube's our main channel, and obviously on Twitter, Instagram, you'll find us on there. Our socials man is on absolute fire at the minute. To be fair, he's just got basically Chelsea fans. Just basically, I think the keyboards are on fire. He's winding Chelsea fans on up that much. To be fair, at the minute, but it's all good fun. It's all good fun. To be fair, the amount of DMs we're getting in the minute from angry Chelsea fans. It's all good fun at the end of the day. But yeah, All Leeds TV and Oscar Mario.
Love that. Listen, guys, I'll be back tomorrow morning with On the Radar. Oh, sorry, I won't be back tomorrow morning with On the Radar. I'll be back tomorrow with fan cam action straight after the full-time whistle at Anfield, where I'll be taking your calls. Please DM me now to guarantee your place. And then next week's a big week of content as well, On the Radar every day. But first and foremost, thanks to these guys for coming on. And thanks to you for watching. Until next time.